Good morning, everyone. It is the Carolina Geek Podcast. I am John Thomas Hill, and today's topic is one that I'm sure many of you probably have discussed in the past amongst yourselves, perhaps at conventions, perhaps with coworkers who are also geeks, perhaps with friends, perhaps just online. I've done all of those. The year, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was either 1992 or 1993 when the SyFy channel came to being. And for many years, it wasn't available where I live at in a very rural area in western North Carolina. I'd heard about it, but it simply wasn't on my cable system despite my best efforts to lobby for it. It finally came about, I think, in 98 or 99. And for the most part, it was pretty good. There was a lot of old stuff. They hadn't gotten Stargate yet. Remember, Stargate for the first 5 seasons was on Showtime. They had some racier material back then, if you can believe that. And they also had, I think, Farscape started in 99, if I'm not mistaken. But for the most part, it was repeats, a lot of Star Trek episodes and whatnot. It started out with the noblest of intents. And now it's come to this. Where did it go wrong? Well, I think a lot of things is the fact that it got caught up in the late 90s, early 2000s when specific cable networks were forced by their corporate overlords to become more broad-based, more generalized. That's why the Learning Channel is not about learning anymore. It's about a lot of reality crap. That's why the Discovery Channel isn't so much about science anymore as it is about reality crap. I think the only thing I ever see on Discovery anymore is fishing boat shows or ice road truckers or whatever. The History Channel used to be about history. Now it's got 1 or 2 pretty good dramas and a lot of alien stuff for some reason. Arts and Entertainment Channel. I remember when the Arts and Entertainment Channel was actually a really cool channel because they had a lot of arts and entertainment stuff. Now it's reality stuff. It's like Live PD. Now they once had that god-awful Duck Commander, whatever the hell it is. The one with the pseudo-rednecks who, if you go into looking at the history of that before they became quote-unquote famous, they weren't like they were what you see them now. Yeah, can you say the word phony? Okay, but I digress. I'm not a fan of reality TV. And one of these days, I'm probably going to rant on it again at my regular podcast, which is the John Thomas Hill Show. But we're going to talk about SyFy Channel today. Now, SyFy has brought us some very good stuff over the years. The rebirth of Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, whatever you want to call it, which to me is the far better show than the one in the 1970s. I know a lot of folks like that show. But to me, that show is tainted by the fact that it, A, has costumes that look straight out of the disco version of science fiction, which is like fingernails on a chalkboard to me. That's why I don't really care for Buck Rogers, because the costumes are god-awful, and it's just, there's a lot of great things about the 70s and early 80s. This ain't one of them. I'm not very fond of disco, and there's a lot of disco influence in both those shows. Okay? The new one started in 2003, had a great run. Didn't have a perfect ending, but it was a very good show. Then you had Farscape. You had other shows like Lex, which I wasn't a real fan of. There were plenty of other shows they've done over the years. The problem is they don't know how to compete with other networks in a general broad-based. For the last 20 years, they have tried their absolute best to compete in a scenario that, frankly, they can't win. And I think they've got to get back to the roots. They've thrown on professional wrestling. They once had the WWF version of WWE version of ECW, which was okay, but it wasn't the original. And knowing the original like I did, it was not nearly as good as the original. It didn't have the chemistry of the original, the spontaneity of the original. What made the original so good, it didn't have it. And one of these days on my RSN channel, Rutherford Sports Network, I'm going to talk about why that failed, in my opinion, and why WWE really should have made it the NXT of its time. And they tried in some way, but they never really got it done. So I may do that today. I've got 2 ideas for podcasts today. Yay! All right. I've been part of this debate. I remember, 2008, I believe? Or was it 2009? It was probably 2008. That I was a part of the debate at Dragon Con about the SyFy-channel. And it was heated. It was the kind of debate that, or maybe in 2006, I think it might have been 2006. I believe it was 2006. Anyhow, I remember it was in the lower level of the Hyatt Regency, or was it the Marriott Marquis? I can't remember. It was one of those. It was down there, and it was hot, and the place was packed, and everybody raised hell about it. Yeah, that was a fun time. And I will say this about sci-fi. I don't mind having some horror films. I didn't even really mind I had wrestling at one time. You know, I'm a wrestling fan. I've been a wrestling fan since the mid-'80s. I can appreciate professional wrestling. The problem is that the science fiction crowd wanted this to be their network. This was their network. This was the network that was going to, and this was like taking ESPN and putting Hallmark movies on it. Okay. There are a lot of people, like sports fans, and by the way, I'm a sports fan myself, thus the Rutherford Sports Network. I could complain about ESPN all day and where they have gone wrong. And I may do that today. I got another idea for a podcast. Yay! All right. So, where did it go wrong? Very simple. What I said earlier. Corporate executives wanted a more broad-based network that reached a larger audience. The problem today with that kind of thinking is it doesn't work as well. 15 years ago, 20 years ago, you could make an argument for that. And it worked back then. Nowadays, with streaming media, with so many specific genre-based channels, there are so many channels out there, it's not even funny. Look at Comet. All they show is reruns, and they're very popular. There's Dust, which does some stuff sci-fi wise. I've not really watched them a whole lot because a lot of the stuff they do is very out there. To me, though, the problem with sci-fi is they got away from their core mission which was to provide science fiction-based programming. And there's so much material they could do. There's so much they've got out there to do, and yet they're stuck doing Sharknado movies. Yeah, they get an audience. Not much of an audience, but they get an audience. And it's garbage. They do schlocky horror films. I know why they do it. It's inexpensive. They don't have to spend a lot of money on it. They can run it to death. It's low quality. They know they'll get an audience for it. Not a big audience, but an audience that'll watch it again and again and again. But it's like when you see an athlete who plateaus at a certain level, but you know if they'd put in the effort, the hard work, and perfected their skill level, they could have been so much more. There's so much stuff out there, and Sci-Fi from time to time tried it. They did a pretty darn good Dune miniseries, and a couple of them actually, that maybe not as good as the books, but they arguably were better than the movie in 1984. I don't know if they'll be better than the movie that's coming out late this year, early next year. There's so much. The Lensman series. They could have done the Foundation series already. The Alistair Reynolds stuff. The Greg Bear Mars stuff. The Kim Stanley Robinson Mars stuff. There's so many. Harry Turtledove's Civil War alternate universe series would have been phenomenal to do. It would have been epic. They could have won Emmys for this. But they instead of doing that, they did this crap that they do now. Schlocky horror movies. You know, there's alternate history they could have done a lot with. There's so much book material out there that they could have done. But they blew it. And now you've got Disney Plus with The Mandalorian. And I'm sure they're going to do more Star Wars stuff. Star Wars. CBS All Access is Star Trek stuff. They got Picard, which is doing pretty well. Discovery, which might be finally finding its feet. They've got the Captain Pike series coming out. I can't remember the name of it. They'll probably have even more coming out. They'll probably bury that franchise again and resurrect it again. There's so much out there that they could do. But they've blown it constantly. The Expanse is a prime example of that. High quality series, didn't get the huge ratings they were expecting, and they canceled it. Amazon Prime picks it up. It's doing fantastic on Amazon Prime. They're making the mistakes that the broadcast networks have been making for years. They could have picked up Firefly. They could have picked up Babylon 5's spin-off series Crusade. Look at what they did with Caprica, the spin-off of Battlestar Galactica. They didn't stay committed to that. Blood and Chrome was a web series they did. They could have done that and would have been very successful at that. They have cut series that could have built an audience over time, right when they were growing. Because they had overlords that did not understand in order to build a sci-fi show audience, you have to give a show time to grow. And sometimes you have to be real patient with a show. But in the current environment, especially ad-driven, like the broadcast networks and the basic cable satellite networks are, you don't have that, especially when you have so much demand, so much supply out there, and ad revenues can't meet it all. And subscriber revenues can't meet it all. And we're starting to see on other platforms that kind of start to plateau a little bit. Now you've got Peacock, the NBC Universal streaming network. Are they going to pick up the banner? Are they going to pick up the mantle? Are they going to have sci-fi material and start doing their own original series? They got one right now, Brave New World. I haven't watched it yet. I've heard it's pretty good. We shall see. There's so much stuff they could do. There's a wealth of material out there. Babylon 5. Warner Brothers is so stupid. You could, if Warner Brothers had been smart, they could have had their own Star Wars / Star Trek level franchise with Babylon 5. But because of petty corporate politics, they're sitting on that show and letting it rot. Oh, it was on Amazon Prime for a bit. Oh, it was on Comet for a bit. They'll show it. They'll have a little, put it out there. They'll dabble it and then they'll pull it away. There was that Go 90 app. It should have been on Sci-Fi for years now. That should have been in rotation for years on Sci-Fi. Where is it now? There's not much out there. You had a couple of shows that were I can't think of it. Killjoys had a good audience. They cut that short. The dark show. I can't think of it. Let me look it up right fast. I can't remember it. I hate when I get Sci-Fi Dark Matter. Thank you. I had a brain fart there. It ran for 4 seasons. It should have run for more. But they cut the legs out from that. They had so many opportunities to build tremendous franchises or pick up franchises from networks that had dropped the ball. But they didn't. They wanted to be a network to appeal to such a broad audience, and they don't realize right now that it doesn't appeal as much. Sci-fi fandom is epic right now. I'm old enough to remember when it was, it was lower than professional wrestling at its worst in terms of being able to bring in an audience. Now, it's massively huge. It's gigantic. You got pro athletes who are proudly geeks. 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that wasn't going to happen. Trust me on this. I know plenty of sports fans. Plenty of athletes. They would, they might like a Batman movie. Maybe. But they just like because it's an action film. Now you got athletes who love it and understand geeks and they're gamers and blah, 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 and comic book people. Back in 30 years ago, if you were an athlete, you weren't going to admit to that. Or maybe you dabbled a little bit at it as a kid, but you got out of it, Sci-Fi is blowing an opportunity to be an even bigger network, a gigantic network. And instead, you see great material going to the Apple TV. They've got the Foundation series. They've got For All Mankind, which is a great alternate history series. You've got Amazon Prime with The Expanse now. They had Man in the High Castle. They've got other stuff. Netflix has got their own stuff. Hulu has their own stuff. They have all this high quality stuff that's winning awards and getting critical acclaim and getting views. And Sci-Fi is still treading water. Why are they not going after Firefly? And do either a reboot or a new series based in the same universe or whatever? Why aren't they doing that? Because their corporate overlords, like in other places, are going, We got to get as many people to watch this show as possible. Instead of going, all right, let's put out this show. We know it'll have a core audience, and we can grow that audience slowly. It's maddening to me that sci-fi isn't as great as it is. It could have been tremendously great. It could have picked up Babylon 5 and went with it and finished Crusade and they had the Legend of the Rangers, but that was awful. I rewatched it recently and I was like, yeah, there was a good reason that got killed. I mean, it was one of those things it's like someone who's trying to bake a lasagna that has no idea how to bake a lasagna. And they're throwing sausage gravy in a lasagna. You don't do that, folks, okay? It's crazy that you have all this material, all the great sci-fi novels that have been the short stories, the wealth of material that you could have done for movies, for TV shows, for limited series and all this, and you resort to cheesy horror films that aren't even worthy of the name. You have all the fantasy stuff that you could do. All that material. And you've dabbled in it occasionally. You had Earthsea, you had a few other things. But you never committed to it. Amazon's going to have their own version of the Lord of the Rings limited series or whatever. You had all this great material that you could have done. You didn't have to play movies over again. Oh, hey, we got the Lord of the Rings trilogy again, or the Star Wars trilogy, or this trilogy, or that trilogy, or whatever. Yeah, that's the core audience right there. That's how TNT's become successful. That's how USA became successful. Because they were able to rerun great shows over time. And I can tell you, I'm sick of marathons. I like binging as much as the next person. But when all you do all day is run the same show over and over again, and I don't even like that show, I'm not going to watch it. Sci-Fi could have been so much better. It can be so much better. But they've had issues with their leadership. They've had issues with their corporate parents wanting them to be something that they're not. And that's what's frustrating about this. And I'm sure you feel that frustration too. Maybe with the Peacock Network, they'll finally give us an opportunity to see the source material. The kind of material that we've been craving as hardcore sci-fi fans for a long, long time. I'm not overly optimistic about it. I'm guardedly optimistic. But I'm also a realist when it comes to this industry. There is a ceiling. If we've not already hit that ceiling, we're getting close. There's only so much money to go around to produce stuff. You're going to have people that like regular dramas, comedies, reality crap. Don't even get me started on reality shows. Oh, not here, but we'll do that on another podcast. But here is the problem with sci-fi. Basic, simple. You had an audience that has consistently proven to be loyal. Star Wars fans, insanely loyal. They will incredibly stay loyal to a product. They'll buy the merchandise. They'll They'll watch everything about it. And yet, we have consistently seen that the audience has failed consistently. And it sucks. It really, really sucks. We have an incredible wealth of material out there. And I keep driving this home, I know. But it's frustrating. As a sci-fi fan all my life, practically. All this original material that's out there. And it's been out there for decades. For decades. For almost a century. You've got all this stuff that you could do. You just got to get some good writers. And there's plenty of good writers in Hollywood and across the country. Some good production people. There's plenty of good production people across the country. Some pretty good actors. There's some really good actors in Hollywood. And all over the place. Vancouver, wherever. You can't tell me you can't produce better than Sharknado or some of the other crap. The disaster movies which are god-awful. 10.5 earthquake or whatever. This huge, gigantic hurricane that's throwing nuclear weapons and all. That waterfront movie, On the Waterfront movie with Marlon Brando, the line he says he could have been a contender. It's resonating right now with SyFy Network. They had so many good shows over the years that they cut the legs out. Battlestar Galactica, they should have stayed committed to that and let it play out for years. Instead, they cut it out after 4 years. They crammed all that stuff in 4 years. That's why the show ended so badly. They could have explained what was really going on with Starbuck and all this other stuff. But they didn't. They didn't give the audience an opportunity to truly grow to the network. And now they're just another network. They have a few shows, but they've had so many great shows that they've cut down in their prime. They could have picked up shows on other networks. They cut them down. Like, you can't tell me they couldn't pick up Firefly. Made some arrangement. They could have picked up the Sarah Connor Chronicles and restarted. It's blasphemous to me that they couldn't have at least grabbed onto that and did something with it. It's insane. Well, that's it for me complaining about SyFy Network today. I hope you've enjoyed the podcast. Look for the Carolina Geek Facebook group. We will try and start doing something with that. I've been busy with a bunch of other things and all this, and NaNoWriMo's coming up. I'm finally going to start my novel again. I'm actually doing some prep work on it right now because I'm trying to get back into that. So, anyhow, it's time to get off on this show. Hope you have a great day, and I will talk at you later at another time. Bye.